Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, Rob Morse of Self-Defense Gun Stories. Rob's a frequent contributor here. It's normally Craig DeLuz's day, but Craig had some scheduling conflicts, and on fairly short notice, Rob said, yeah, I'll come in. I'll spend some time with you. So, Rob, thanks for coming along today, man.
My pleasure, Paul.
So lots of news to get to today. First one we got up in show notes. We got a bit of good news coming out of Washington D.C. Well, it's not good news yet, but
Paul, do you remember you worried that would we have enough news to cover about the Second Amendment to do a half-hour show every day, and we're constantly performing triage because we have so much to cover. This is an example.
Yeah.
It's proposed legislation coming in Congress. It'd mandate that each national forest and each Bureau of Land Management district include at least one public recreational shooting range. The bill is called the Range Access Act. It was proposed by U.S. Republican Representative Blake Moore from Utah. Now, this could build hundreds of new public shooting ranges. Representative Moore was asked, why do you think we need that all of a sudden? And he argued that, look, we've got millions of new gun owners. They need a place where they can go shoot safely and increase their skills. Now, does it have a snowball's chance? No, not with controlled Senate and Biden in the presidency.
Not till January, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Come January, you may find, well, Joe, you wanted to have give money away to China? Well, it's going to cost you.
Well, and now let's remember, we got national park carry under Obama, who previously was the most anti-gun president in history.
But you remember that was attached to a credit card bill.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
So this is it, right now, as of October, this is kind of pie in the sky.
Yeah.
But it will live through till January, and let's see what happens in January. This could happen.
Well, do you remember model legislation? And you do recall all the model legislation for national reciprocity. And then when the Republicans held the House, the Senate, and the White House, all that model legislation disappeared, including from Congressman Massey. So, yeah, there's a lot of politics being played on the Hill.
There is.
Chicago?
Yeah, let's do Chicago.
Now, I wish we said a story from Chicago, but this is Chicago. We have a number of them. A controversial anti-violence activist priest in Chicago. Well, you remember him, Father Pfleger. He once caught attention for his relationship with former President Barack Obama, and now he's under investigation for another sexual abuse of a minor case. The Archbishop of Chicago announced Saturday that Father Michael Pfleger will be under investigation for new allegations of sexual abuse of a minor. Father Pfleger, quote, has been asked to step aside from ministry and live away from the parish while the allegation is investigated. Quote, he agreed to cooperate fully with this request, close quote. That's the Archbishop of Chicago, Cardinal Blaise Cupich. The allegation was reported to the Illinois Department of Child and Family Services. Now, Pfleger's no stranger to controversy. He once received condemnation for threatening to snuff out a federally licensed gun shop owner. That snuff out is in quotes, by the way. That was at an NRA protest led by Reverend Jesse Jackson. Also, he proposed a gun buyback, but you could only get money for your gun if you were, was it under 25 years of age? So we're going, someone with child molestation issues shouldn't. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay. On to other things in Chicago.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Let's that one just makes me feel dirty listening to it.
Yeah, right. Well, this other one is really sad, though. Gun Control Chicago had 29 people shot and wounded over the weekend. The sad news is that an additional 7 people were shot and killed. The total is now over 2,900 people shot this year by the drug gangs who run Lori Lightfoot's Chicago. Now, I wish it stopped there. If that were the only news that made us cringe, well, we haven't learned the whole lesson yet. Over the same weekend, Baltimore had 2 people murdered with guns, and an additional 3 more were wounded. That brings the total up to 235 people shot and killed in Baltimore this year. Why do I pick Chicago and Baltimore? Because those are the crown jewels of Gun Control Central.
Yes.
Illinois brags about its gun control. Maryland claims that, don't they actually get an A rating by Giffords? But both of them say that it's not really their fault that their cities are so violent. See, it's the guns that come from other places where there isn't crime. And then when the guns come to Chicago and Baltimore, where for some reason that's where the guns actually cause the crime, even though the honest citizens are disarmed by gun control. And if you believe that, then you'll believe that Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago and Mayor Brandon Scott of Baltimore are really doing a great job protecting us.
Yeah.
If you believe that, good luck with it.
What brings that to me is a statistic recently released, recently being within the past 6 months is the first time I heard it. The average time from a gun being sold to a gun being found at a crime scene is 11 years. So that iron pipeline, which, by the way, I heard on a Fox News broadcast again today, which made me reach up and click the channel. That iron pipeline is the slowest pipeline I've ever heard of in my life.
I think there's a hole in that pipeline. If it takes over a decade, well, okay, Paul, let's say, just pretend. They're absolutely right that there is an iron pipeline. If it takes a decade for a firearm to go from where it was stolen out of state to end up in either Chicago or Baltimore, then that is not how you're going to make the city safer, by putting measures in place that will take a decade before they see fruition.
Mm-hmm.
It's a losing strategy. But will the mainstream media say? We have one more, and this one...
hang on, I want to get a comment in here. I want to get actually 2 comments I want to get in here real quick, because one just popped. But let me get this one in first. Going back to the first story we did about the park ranges, Big John 410 says there's a major shortage of rifle and skeet ranges in urban areas. Having parkland open up will help a lot, since private gun clubs have a long waiting list to join. You're absolutely right there. In that, and let's face it, for the national parks are really not, at least for me, and I don't know about you, Rob, but for me in South Dakota, it's not that long of a drive to get to a national park. We have national grasslands that are less than an hour away from me. There are closer ranges, but I live in free America.
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, imagine this. You live in a rural area, but a lot of that rural landscape is state controlled or BLM controlled. You want to shoot, and they say, oh, nay, you're too close to a national park. You go, what? Yeah, so this would help change that. Can I do our last Chicago story?
Yes.
Gun Saves Lives is what is it? Is it a rabble-rousing group? Is it firearm safety? Is it a charity? You get points for all 3. Absurdity in politics. So they've collected a bunch of junk.
You broke up. Could you start that again? I'm sorry, but you broke up real bad at the beginning.
Okay, Gun Saves Lives is a charity out of a Chicago suburb. They trade in junk guns for cash, and then they use the money they collect and use it for firearms and for ammunition for youth shooting sports. So there was a recent turn in a gun buyback. They found a bunch of junk. There are pictures of it at their website. $1,010. We said, that's not really a gun. It was a gun from the 1800s. Folding trigger. It was like a Derringer. And it goes, okay, give it back to me. Well, you can't have it back. Wait, that's confiscation. So evidently you have to bring your lawyer with you. But the guy did admit, compared to the 3D firearms that were printed in New York, Utica, and turned in for $21,000, he goes, man, I got to up my game. But he does have a taste for, he says, Lightfoot, you're for funding youth sports next time.
Yeah. I absolutely applaud them for doing that. Absolute, and if you go to their website, the stuff they turned in was absolutely trash. Stuff that I would not trust to fire even once.
Yeah, but a collector might, I'm ashamed that it's going to be destroyed, because some collector will go, that's a historic gun. Maybe it was only worth 150, but still, yeah, I'm sorry that the market didn't put it in the hands of somebody who wanted it more.
Yeah, but at least with Guns Save Lives, it's got a decent chance of getting to that collector before it goes to the buyback.
Yeah, okay. Probably true. He probably, there you go. Good point. Do you want to go to Orlando?
I do want to talk about that Orlando story because, and we don't normally do this on the Bullet, but this is right up your alley. You do the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast, and we talk about every Monday. We talk about defensive gun uses on Polite Society, right. And this is a good one. There was a robbery where the good guy prevailed in an Orlando mall.
Absolutely. It's just before noon. The jewelry store owner in the mall has to sort out his staff, who's going to lunch when. And 4 guys come in. They're wearing masks, hoodies. One of them has a gun. Somebody's breaking the jewelry cases, grabbing his merchandise, and he notices that somebody's pointing. One of the bad guys is pointing the gun at customers, at him, at his staff, and he goes, I can't let this stand. He's concealed carrying. Puts shots into the bad guy who's got the gun, puts shots into the bad guy next to him, and suddenly the other 2 bad guys are gone. Everybody retreats, gets people behind display cases. How is everybody? Are any of us hurt? There's glass and jewelry all over the floor. That'll take care of it in a minute. Okay, let's call 911. Get help on the way. Okay, if everybody's okay, look around the corner. Oh, in the mall, there's a man's body around the corner. Oh, God, do we go out to... Eventually, they sort things out so that passersby don't pick up jewelry. And EMTs and cops arrived. He puts his gun away. When the police get there, EMS declares the criminal lying next to the jewelry store dead on the scene. Police look for one of the other attackers. They find the car that was in the parking lot as a getaway car. It's been abandoned. There's a wounded man in it. He's still alive when the police find him. When EMS get to him, they take him to the hospital. He later dies. Police are still looking for the other 2 robbers. The defender isn't charged with a crime.
Yeah. This is the perfect defensive gun use is one where no shots are ever fired. This is the next best thing, where shots go where they are intended to go, only hit the bad guys, and only do damage to the bad guys. And there's 2 bad guys that will never be robbing any place and threatening innocents with firearms again.
Let's think about what best practice might include. And just two simple tips. Wouldn't it be awesome if there were another staff member who was armed?
Yes.
Because having one person shoot at you is frightening. Having multiple people shooting at you, like as soon as you try and focus on one, the other guy shoots you, because you can't pay attention to 2 things at one time. The other would be, if you're ever in this situation at all, ask everyone to call 911.
Yes. And even better, and one more suggestion, they may have this.
Sure.
This was a kiosk, but make sure if there's video, multiple angle video, high quality video, so that everything is the evidence chain is clear. And if
No,
there's,
I go for it. No, I did see some description of this that called it a store and others that called it a booth. So I don't know what it was, Paul.
yeah, I'm not sure either. You mentioned multiple people carrying. The one thing I would caution with that is if you're going to be carrying with two people in the store, you're going to be working in tandem. Train in tandem, please. Get used to working together. The one thing you want to be extremely aware of is crossfire. And make sure that the round that fires hits the bad guy, not the bad guy and your partner.
You're essentially using the idea of being in a crossfire to your advantage.
Yes.
Make sure you make sure that neither you nor your partner are downrange.
Yes, 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 yes. Should we move off to California, my friend?
Well, we can talk about it. I'm not sure I want to go there.
But before we do, I want to get one more comment in here.
Sure.
My take over on YouTube, going back to the gun buyback, and I don't like that term because that in order to buy it back, they would have had to have sold it to you. But
right.
My take says the safest way to throw away a gun. Yeah, especially these no questions asked buybacks.
Paul, there was somebody said, how can it be a no questions asked buyback, but they say they'll only buy 3 guns from you?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, that was from Polite Society last night. There's a gun buyback coming up in Santa Rosa, California, and anybody in Santa Rosa, it's coming up this coming Saturday. You still got time to print up a couple. They'll give you $300 a pop for them.
Yeah, you get bonus points for ghost guns.
Yeah.
Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco recently sent out a notification to concealed carry holders in the county, saying that there's a public record request from Viacom CBS for the names of all people who have concealed carry permits. The sheriff says that after the request was received, he reached out to county attorneys to see if there's any way I can not answer it. And no, he says we have to turn over that information. Now, Superior Court judge in San Diego, Catherine Bacall, issued a preliminary injunction against California Assembly Bill 173, saying, no, you can't share firearms owners, including concealed carry permit holder, information with the news or with gun control researchers. So, by the way, the state already leaked a lot of that information from their website during a data breach. If you were exposed, all I can say is get LifeLock. I think a good class action lawyer might put California or the county of Riverside on the hook for LifeLock or its equivalent for all concealed carry and gun owners in the county.
And I'm going to say this, data breach. I'm not entirely sure that was an accident.
It was a leak, Paul. I didn't expose all of my political enemies. I'm sure of it.
Cam had an interesting take on this. He wrote about the first part of it. Cam had an interesting take. California is effectively still, even right now after Bruins, effectively is May issue. And Cam had an interesting take. If the state is May issue, then the public absolutely has a right to know who's getting those permits. Is it just friends of the sheriff, such as the
in San Jose?
In San Jose, yeah, thank you. The only name that was coming to my head was Cupertino. Such as San Jose, where the sheriff is currently under going
She's on
through a
trial.
trial. Yeah, for corruption.
No, it is civil rather than criminal,
Right.
which I don't entirely understand. But I think if convicted, she'd have to step down.
She has not yet.
Right. No.
So yeah, she's not running for re-election, but she has not stepped down. I believe her term does go for, I think, another 2 years.
January?
No, I think
Oh,
it's
really?
January
it
of
was
20.
this year.
I thought it was January 2024.
Oh, look at you. I love working with smart people.
I could be wrong. I will check and we'll let you know tomorrow. But I don't want to get a lot of keyboard typing in over the air. So because my keyboard is right by my microphone.
But what's interesting is that let the public know law is pretty much in conflict with, individual rights. So which is it? Okay, there's a tension there to be settled by a judge. What's fascinating is that if we looked at Bruin and do you have the right to have privacy about whether you're a license holder or not, you look at Bruin and say, was there any law that would make, one, there were no licenses in that period, so that gets wiped out, but there were certainly regulations that if you had a gun, that it would ever be made public.
Right. Right. Let's see, where are we at on time? Oh, we got plenty of time left. Dude, let's talk Texas.
Yeah. The entire Uvalde, Texas Independent School District Police Force is gone. They were dismissed. Now, not all of them were fired. Some of them were transferred within the school district, but they're no longer in a law enforcement capacity. And it's a good step toward, well, at least it's a step toward accountability for the horrific and embarrassing inaction of law enforcement in the mass murder in Uvalde, Texas. The lengthy wait to act while a shooter was in a school was inexcusable. Every one of us has a right to demand answers as to why the police stood next to an unlocked door as our kids were being murdered.
Yeah, I've seen articles where they're saying the school police department isn't so much to blame as the Texas State Police showed up on scene. There was a battle for control. My understanding is there was a battle not to control the scene. It was a hot potato thing, man. I'm not the one that controls this. This is too big for me. Nobody wanted to take command.
Paul, let's back up. A lot of us were raised on cop movies.
Yes.
Oh, there's a bad guy with a gun. We'll send in the SWAT team, special weapons and tactics. Great. That's the opposite of what you do in a mass shooter situation. We used to say the first armed person grabbed any partner he could, and then they went in. The advantage of two of you going in, you can look in different directions because it's hard to advance and see everything that's happening in front of you. The advantage, it's a huge advantage to say, you look left, I'll look right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said, no, that takes too long. If you're the first guy there with a gun, go.
Yes.
Well, how do you end up with 100 guys with guns standing around? You're violating the first rule of immediate violent action. So, wow.
And the video we've all seen of 8 or 9 people at the end of the hallway, one guy scrolling on his phone, others milling about while the murder is still going on.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Well, notice that the guy who stopped it was a Border Patrol agent. He borrowed a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't kitted up. What he had is the determination to act. And so when somebody says, oh, you know what, gosh, school staff really can't defend the children, they're not SWAT cops. So far, the non-SWAT cops are doing a pretty fair job.
Well, and I want you to we're going to be having in the very near future on Polite Society podcast, we're going to be having Jim Irvine on from the Faster program. He was supposed to be on yesterday, had to reschedule. We haven't got him rebooked yet, but you've been through the Faster training program, Rob, and that is some amazing training. From I had the opportunity, I had an invite to go last year because of my health challenges. I couldn't, right. But if you could describe the mental preparedness they put you through, because I think that's the biggest part of their training is the mental part of the training.
100%. Yes, they talk about what likely scenarios look like, which is different at an elementary school, at a high school, at a junior college. They're not all the same. But there's huge pressure to act knowing that this is a crowded environment. I'm not going to describe the exercises. I'll let Jim choose what to reveal and what to not talk about. But let's say there's a lot of emphasis put on accuracy, and that you know when you can hit your target, and if you're too far away to hit it. That puts a lot of pressure on these first responders. It's entirely appropriate. They don't want to kill innocent kids. For many of them, they talked themselves out of the program. They said, gosh, I think, I don't know that I could do this if I needed to. And I know it's really important that someone act. He said, and the classic answer is beautiful. You're absolutely right. You're a volunteer. You know your capabilities better than we do. You know your heart. But the only reason we put the gun portion of this class in place at all is to stop the attack. And that's just so that we can start to apply first aid. So stay there for the trauma care class, and they all do. And then the next day, when they're pushing some quick clot gauze into a piece of beef that's been squirted with extra red food coloring, they go, man, I'd do anything to keep this from being one of my kids or one of my colleagues, one of the parents. And they realize, okay, if I'm not there to fix it, who will be? And they often talk themselves right back into the program because they're the best person for the job.
The most significant training I've ever taken was when I went to the Firearms Academy of Seattle and took an active shooter interdiction course. Yep. In that course, I proved to myself, this was pre-stroke, this has been a few years ago, I proved to myself at that time I could reliably first shot hit a man-sized target at 45 yards while I was moving. That's not easy, and that was after a lot of training prior. Can I do that now? I don't know. That's why I need to go back and get more training to find out where my limits are now. But after taking that class, I knew for sure where my limits were then. I would encourage anybody that has taken training to get training that pushes you to your limit. Find where your limits are. That way you know if there is a situation where you've got to make that shot, you know for sure whether you can make that shot or not.
And the classic example is, if there were a mass murder event in your grocery store, can you shoot the length of a grocery store aisle? Looks a lot like Walmart. And the answer is, it might be really hard to do offhand, but nobody said you had to do it the way you stand in the port in a square shooting range. You can cheat, lean against something. If necessary, get on the ground.
Yep.
If you practice those cheats, you won't stand there for 3 seconds going, oh yeah, what do I do next? Thank you, DJ. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. DJ put up fastersaveslives.com or .org, I'm sorry.
Do we have time to do New Jersey?
Let me get my takes comment. I believe he's talking about
sure.
the officers that were pooled in the hallway that should at the minimum haunt every one of them, and many should be going to jail. I don't think any will. I really don't think
Right.
anybody in the law enforcement arena there is going to go to jail, but I believe it is haunting each and every one of them. You don't get into law enforcement because you want a cushy job. Most people get into law enforcement because they really do want to make a difference.
And I think what happened is they were trapped by the idea of chain of command. How do I help? And there was no one there to answer because there wasn't a clear chain of authority. And until it was established, a bunch of good guys stood around and did nothing. No one recognized individual initiative and said, I'm going through the door. Who's coming with me?
Yep. Uh, we're already over time, but we're gonna run a little longer because I want to get to these at least. Let's get through New York or New Jersey, and yeah, let's do both New Jersey and New York. We may go 10 minutes long, but let's do
Okay.
this.
A court in New Jersey said that the requirement of a, quote, justifiable need, close quote, to either purchase a firearm or to receive a carry permit is unconstitutional. He issued a permanent injunction against existing New York firearms laws. What does that mean? That means those laws violated an individual civil right and the plaintiffs can collect, quote, reasonable costs and attorney's fees. Well, good. It's about time that the Second Amendment was not a lost stepchild. The NRA and the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs helped bring the lawsuit. I'm glad their costs will be covered.
And let's juxtapose this with late last week. The we thought New York had a bad carry law they passed, and everybody and their cousin is suing New York.
Right.
Hold on to your shorts, folks. New Jersey's carry law is coming up next.
Right. Yeah. And they know it's going to be challenged. Now, this is old news, Paul. It's 3 days old. 2 Western New York congregation leaders joined with the Firearms Policy Coalition and the Second Amendment Foundation to file a lawsuit against New York State. The plaintiffs, one a pastor and the second a bishop, are challenging New York's gun control regulations that made an absolute prohibition on carrying guns on church property unless you were a, what do they call it, security guard. By the way, you have to get a license from the state to be one of those. For these men, the pastors, and their families, they might be disarmed at home since they can live in a parsonage next to the church on church property.
Yes.
Yikes. Yeah, sloppy laws have bad consequences.
They do. They do. And I'm proud that SAF is a part of that lawsuit. That is that's an essential one. That New York, and I'm not going to say it's unintended. It may be an intended consequence of this law. This is one way to get more of the population knowing that if you live in a parsonage, if you're that close to a church, yeah, guess what? You have to give up your guns. They're going to make as many people give up their guns as they possibly can.
What's infuriating about that is if there was an attack on the church, they would say, see, it's those people with guns that are the problem. And the media would carry water for them rather than saying, look, you gun control fanatics, you disarmed the victims again.
Absolutely.
The last one about the TRO.
Yes.
A federal appeals court judge in upstate New York issued a temporary restraining order that stops the state's recently passed Concealed Carry Improvement Act. Unfortunately, the judge then put a stay on his ruling until his ruling could be reviewed by a 3-judge appeals panel. That ruling wasn't perfect. He still let some things stand, like this church carry prohibition. What's odd is that 3-judge panel has had this case since last Friday. You know, remember when it used to take decades to get a Second Amendment ruling? And now we're going 3 days. Why haven't they ruled already?
Well, the Bruin decision, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, is not that long. That is not even an hour's read. So as long as the three judges read that decision and look over the decision by this appeals court judge, it should be a slam dunk. However,
from your lips to the judge's ears, huh?
Yes. I think that's where we're going to set it aside today, Rob. We're so far 5 minutes over, but let's go ahead and, if we could, tell everybody about Self-Defense Gun Stories and anything else you want to plug today, man.
Well, I host the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. It comes out once a week. I'm gonna plug our joint endeavor for the last 10 years. I'm a co-host, thank you, Paul, on the Polite Society podcast. My blog is at slowfacts.wordpress.com. From there, my writing is picked up at AmmoLand.
Very cool, very cool. I want to invite everybody to come back. Join us again 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow when Rob Morse joins us again. Tomorrow's supposed to be Amanda's Suffolk's Day. However, Amanda is in no internet land. She's in Florida, and where she's at, her internet is horrific and only barely passable for audio, not for video. So Rob's gonna go ahead and step in again tomorrow. But we've got shows tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time. Please come join us, and thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for commenting, those of you who have, and we will catch you next time.